The If You Pay Attention podcast is brought to you by Divine by God's Design, LLC. Welcome to 2022. Well, welcome to 2022 and this edition of the If You Pay Attention podcast. My name is Jerrika and I'm your host, and we're trying something a little bit different today, and I hope that let me turn my music off. I'm hoping that this is a format that I can grow comfortable with. I am totally out of my comfort zone because normally when I record the podcast, I am super basic. I don't have a face on. Of course I have a face, but you know what I'm saying. I don't have on any makeup. Probably still in my pajamas, just depending on how that's going. But I am just really grateful for today. And so here's hoping that this is something that we can continue into and enjoy. So today I want to start this year off with transparency. Like, there's a lot of things and ideas going through my mind about what I want to speak about, what I want to talk about, what I want the podcast to be about. But really, I've been fasting, my version of the fast, for 21 days, and it ends tomorrow. So best believe I will be at my home church tomorrow eating me some Chick-fil-A and Krispy Kreme donuts and living my best I'm no longer fasting life. But I've been fasting from a myriad of things over the last 21 days. And the one thing that the Lord has been bringing me back to is who He is and whose He is. And as a result, who I am and whose I am. And y'all, bear with me, okay? Because this is my first time recording. And so I see now that I don't want to record with my glasses because the lights give a glare that I hope is not too distracting. But also, my children are home today because we're doing virtual school. So the screaming and the mayhem that you may hear in the background, which y'all should be used to them, is going to be them, because this is what we do. This is how we get down here in the Jones Walker household. Okay, boo. So listen, these Walker children are rambunctious from the time they wake up until they lay down at night. They feel like, it's their birthright. And who am I to interfere and try to silence and censor them? Okay, but let's get back on the subject. I couldn't find the word, but the main thing about this fast is the Lord has been revealing to me who He is, whose He is, who I am, and whose I am. And what that means is that, we say that we're Christians, we go to church, we throw up prayers to God, we do certain things, or we refrain from doing certain things. We have our little sayings and all those kinds of things. But the Lord has really been dealing with me, and my hair is caught in this earring. The Lord has really been dealing with me about walk it like I talk it. And if I'm going to name the name of Christ, to actually be someone who trusts in that name and who lives, for the applause of heaven, and grows that relationship with Him. And one of the main ways that He's been doing that with me is kind of working out my kinks. Like, I've had some kinks, meaning that in my relationship with God, some places we're able to flow freely. Other places we have not been, because there's a kink in the water hose. Like, think of it as a water hose, and you know how if when you're trying to water your plants, I'm thinking about me because I try to water my plants outside with my water hose, and it's like you get some flow, and then it gets better, and then it gets stopped up again as you move the hose around, because depending on how you're moving and pulling and yanking at the hose, it'll either straighten out or it'll create a kink. And when there's kinks in the hose, water still may flow out, but it won't flow as freely as it would, if it was free of the kinks. And so that is what the Lord has been dealing with me about in the first month of 2022, is coming after the kinks in my water hose that's stopping the free flow of worship, of love, of relationship between him and me. Like, he's free flowing love. God is love. Nothing that I'm doing is ever going to separate me from his love. But for me, there was a stoppage of the flow of the love I was showing back to him, of the faith that I had in him, of the trust that I had in him, for various reasons. And so what he's been trying to do is work out those kinks, and I've been less resistant to that. Like, there's been, a lot of ways that me and the Lord have been struggling for most of my Christian life, because I just didn't understand why things were the way they were. I had issues with the way that some of the people in the Bible were treated, and I felt like, God, you just allowed it to happen. And I feel that way for me. Like, I feel like other people have certain roads and certain things in their lives that they're able to just walk right up to and do without any resistance, without any issues, without any delay, without any denial, and they just kind of got it easy. And I'm like, what am I missing? Because I can only do what you've been able me to do, and I'm trying to work out my faith, and I'm trying to be in faith, I'm trying to trust, but you're not giving me anything. And so he has just been showing me his love for me, and that I'm his, that he is mine. And it's been a good time. Like, I've been hangry the month of January. I'm not gonna lie. I can't wait till tomorrow. And it's like, I've been craving foods that I don't even necessarily eat these foods every day or every week, but it's just the simple act of the self-denial that now it's like, oh, I can't wait till I have X, Y, or Z, and especially on those days where, because for me it was a hybrid fast. It wasn't, I was doing the same thing every day. So there was times where it was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I wasn't eating, or I wasn't eating meat on this day, or I couldn't eat a meal before this time on this day. And then we're doing that in addition to not being on social media or not reading the news, not listening to certain types of music. And then on other days where it was more lax, we're still not eating these types of food, right? It was self-denial in a way. And one of the main things I want to point out about a fast, okay, because many people have a definition of a fast, and especially of what a biblical fast is. And most of the time, people are going to say a biblical fast is you abstain from food, meaning that the denial is you're not eating and you're using that time to seek God, okay? But there are many fasts in the Bible, and a lot of people use the Daniel fast as a model. And I want you to absolutely go to the Bible for examples of how to fast, because the Bible is our instruction manual. And so it's important that we're going to the Bible. If we need examples on how to be in faith, if we need examples on how to talk to people, we need examples for life, go to the instruction manual and get them. But what I want all of us to understand is, make sure that the fast that you undertake is something that God ordained for you, meaning that don't just take up a fast and get on a fast because somebody else is doing it. And don't just do the type of fast that they're doing because that's what they're doing. Make sure that it, for one, is something that's healthy for you, and it's something that will convict you and cause you to, yes, be challenged. So I'm not saying do a fast that's easy for you. It should be a challenge. Self-denial is a challenge, but make sure that I'm not undertaking a 40-day, 40-night fast like Jesus did if I've never fasted before and I'm not really disciplined in my habits yet. Nancy Dufresne, which is a Bible teacher who is based out of California, talks about being skilled in the supernatural, being skilled in the faith, being skilled in your Christian walk. And I think that when we're undertaking a fast, it's important to look at where our skill level is as a starting point and then challenge ourselves from there to become more skilled. So for me, to make it plain, I always struggled with fasting because I always struggled with discipline, right? Mainly because I just didn't want to be uncomfortable. Let's just be real. I just didn't like being uncomfortable. And so I would avoid it at all costs. And I would make excuses as to, well, I can just not do, just to avoid the discomfort of discipline. But also knowing that before, I never got through a complete 21-day fast, and I've never really gotten through a full days of not having any food type of fast. I made sure that I came into this one first of all prepared. So I didn't just say, oh, the fast starts on January 9th. Let me get my mind right on January 8th at 9 p.m. No, I started, slowly weaning myself and getting my mind right for the fast about a week or two out, because I knew it was coming, and I knew that I wanted some things from God. I wanted to entreat heaven about certain things, and I knew that there were places that I needed to get more disciplined in, to get more revelation in, to be able to move forward. And so I made sure to prepare myself for the fast before it happened. And one thing is to always take grace with me, because I'm one of those people where it's all or nothing. And so I knew that if I didn't take grace with me into this fast, the first time that maybe I forgot I was fasting or didn't feel like fasting and I'm just going to eat the chocolate bar anyway, I knew that if I didn't take grace, I was just going to throw the whole fast away. And so I knew that if one meal, fasting for 21 days, if I messed up on one meal and did not have grace with me, I was going to throw away the entire fast. And that's not the way to be. And so when you're undertaking a fast, when you're undertaking this Christian life period, always take grace with you, but also make sure that you're not taking somebody else's experience, somebody else's convictions, and placing them around your neck like a noose, okay? Because God is such a loving God. God is such a kind God. God is such a big God. God is such an innovative God. He can meet you where you are. Now, God is also God. He does not change. He's the same God for your neighbor that he is for you. Okay, and so when the Bible says that we don't do X things and Y things and Z things, that's what God means. His grace is that he will come alongside you while you may still be struggling with some things that he does not consider his best. But it's not that he's going to allow you to do those things and excuse them as okay. All right. So I just want to make sure that we have balance in the things that we're talking about. But the whole point of is when I was doing this fast, the Lord had really been, revealing to me more of himself, because I had built this idea of who God was. And I would say to him, yes, Daddy, you're awesome and you're kind and you're faithful and you're just and you're true. But I wasn't sure that I really believed that. And the reason why I know that I didn't really believe that is because before God is anything, he's love, right? And that was never something that I would lead off in when I was talking to God or about God. I wouldn't lead off with he is love. But I've noticed more, like, because of this fast, that's been one of the main things that I do now, say, Lord, you're love. And you're lovingly kind, right? And then I go off into you're powerful, you're holy, you're righteous. But God became my God. He became my Father. He wasn't just some distant person off in the past. And so then I became more comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable, because it started to click to me that the Lord will be there. you know and one of the main ways that I was able to, I'm trying to find my note cards, get to that revelation was I picked up a study Bible that's like a big old brick. I picked up this NIV topical Bible, and it's not so much a study Bible per se in that it's giving you notes and things, though it does do that, but it just helps you to kind of, if you want to study a certain topic, then you're able to do that. And it led me to the names of God. And one, I found that when we're calling him Jehovah, that's really a mispronunciation of his name. And we'll go into that another time. But the main thing about it is there were 7 names of God that was discussed in that topic that I was studying that day. God has many names. But the one that stuck out to me is Yahweh Shammah. Shammah. And Shammah is not necessarily a name of God, it's a description of who God is, meaning that technically the translation in English would be Yahweh is Shammah. And in that context, because Shammah has another meaning, but in that context where it was used, it means that Yahweh is there. And what that was linked to was back in Genesis, where the Lord was speaking to Hagar, and or Hagar, however you pronounce it. I'm not Hebrew, so, but he was dealing with Hagar because she had been going through it, honey. She had just gotten into, I wouldn't even say a fight, but an altercation with Sarah, her master's wife, because she was a servant, she was a slave, however you interpret that. Either way, she was not an equal partner in that house. And so she had just gotten into it with Sarah. And I really use that term lightly, more that Sarah got into it and onto her because of Sarah's own jealousy, because of Sarah's own sin, because of Sarah and Abraham's own poor decision making, that they kind of just threw Hagar, however you're going to say her name, in, that she didn't really choose, because again, she's a servant girl living in their house. And so the decisions that they make was not in consultation, in agreement with her. It was more like, this is what we're doing, so you're doing it too. But the Lord, that had been one of the kinks in my water hose, was how Hagar had been dealt with. And I had really struggled, because I was like, this was Sarah's fault, this was Abraham's fault, but they were able to come down on her without consequence to themselves. And the Lord has shown me that they both had quite the consequence, which we'll discuss, but he also had a promise for Hagar. And so this episode is really more of an introductory, it's more of a rambling, but if it's going to have an anchor text, then I would say that it is Genesis chapter 16. And I would invite you to study that out, Genesis chapter 12, so on and so forth, 16 and 17 on your own time. But the Lord had been dealing with me, because I went back to this story of Sarah and Hagar. And it's funny that that's where he would start, because I really was I had written out a note card with the names of God on it. And I don't know if that's going to focus, but, and excuse my handwriting, but I had written out these names, and I was making sure that every day I was getting up and reminding God of who he is, because it was building my faith in who he is, because faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of God. And Yahweh Shammah is kind of been the sticking point, right? Because the other names of God were more familiar to me. Yahweh Nisi, the banner of victory. Yahweh Rapha, the healer. Yahweh Shalom, the Prince of Peace. Yahweh Sikkenu, God's righteousness. Yahweh Yireh, the provider. Those names were more familiar to me. And I had just gotten familiar with El Roi, or Yahweh Shammah, meaning the Lord is there, right? And I think that is a sticking point that God wanted to really reveal to me, because it became important to him that I realized that he was there. You know, the Bible says that God will never leave you nor forsake you. If you make your bed in Sheol or hell, he's there with you. If you ascend into the heavens, he's there with you. He is always with you. You know, he never said that you wouldn't suffer. He just said that you wouldn't suffer alone. You know, God was there in the Garden of Gethsemane when Jesus was like, Lord, do we really got to do this? And he was sweating like drops of blood. You know, he was there when Jesus was on that cross, and he was there when Jesus was feeding the 10,000, you know, and he was there when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. He's there when I graduated from law school. He was there when I passed the bar in Alabama on the first time, and he was there when I failed the bar exam in North Carolina a couple of times. Okay, we didn't pass the bar on the first or second try in North Carolina. I actually had to take the bar exam 4 times in North Carolina to pass it, right? But he was there. He was there when I gave birth to my children, from Jeremy down. You know, when I was birthing Jeremy as a single mama and his daddy was nowhere to be found, to when I was birthing my girls and their daddy is right there. It has always been there. He was there when Jeremy was adopted by Anthony, the girl's dad, you know, when he was my husband. And so God has been there when I was ascending. God has been there when I was languishing. God was there when I was doing things behind closed doors that I had no business doing. And the point is that he wanted to make that obvious to me, that not only was he there, right, but he had something to say. And he was there on my side. You know, people can be there when you're doing things. You know, I'm reminded of a video that's circulating the internet right now of a teacher in Birmingham doing some things she had no business doing. And a lot of people was there to witness it. And a lot of people that were there witnessing it recorded it and is now sharing it. Okay, so being just there alone is not always, you know, the gift, but being there and being willing to intercede and step in on your behalf. And so we were looking at Genesis chapter 16, and basically, to start it off, Sarah and Abraham had not had any kids because Sarah was barren. Okay, the Lord had promised them a child. Abraham was going to have this child through Sarah. When he promised this, Abraham was about 75. He was 10 years older than Sarah, so she was about 65. And my ladies, let's think about that at 65 years old. Like a lot of us, we're under 40, but at 65 years old, ain't a lot of ladies still out here naturally having no babies, okay? And so the time has gone on and gone on and gone on. And so Abraham, I think, is about 85, 86 years old. And Sarah gets this bright idea of, you know what? Maybe God was saying that you're going to have a kid and then I'm going to raise it as mine, but maybe it doesn't have to come from my own body. So here I got this maid servant, Hagar. Why don't you have the baby through her? She'll get pregnant. I'll take the baby and I'll raise it as my own. You know, what could go wrong with that? Sarah wasn't firing on all cylinders at that point. And one of the sticking points that God wants to point out is, do not get so desperate for the promise that you birthed Ishmael, which was the son that came of this, that you step outside of God's protection, that you step outside of God's provision, that you step outside of God's instruction to bring something to pass. Because if God promised you something, God is going to bring it to pass in his own time. And it may seem like, oh, the clouds is dark. we passed the time. Sarah's 65, 70, 75. I definitely can understand, like, okay, 75-year-old women ain't giving birth. If I couldn't give birth when I was 25, how am I about to do it at 75? But if God promised it, he expects you to trust him enough to bring it to pass. And he's with you in your wilderness. He's there, right? So that isn't the general point that I'm trying to get to. So basically, Abraham, again, not firing on all cylinders and a little bit too eager, okay, goes and sleeps with Hagar. There's a reason why men have helpmeet in us, because they thinking sometimes, especially when it comes to sex, is questionable. Okay, so he sleeps with her, she gets pregnant. Hagar, being a maidservant who's now been elevated to second wife, gets the big head and starts feeling herself and is looking at Sarah like, oh yeah. Because you got to understand, back in those days, how many children you birthed as a woman was really one of the indicators of your worth to them in society. If you're not thinking about how God has valued you, you're looking at how many children you've birthed. And so Sarah hasn't birthed any. And now on the first try, I hope, Hagar is now pregnant. And so she's starting to get the big head and look haughty at Sarah. And Sarah, instead of taking ownership and responsibility for her mistake, goes back to Abraham and says, you see this? This is on you. Now this chick pregnant and she looking down her nose at me. This sin be on you. I gave her to you and I became despised. The Lord judged between you and me. It's like Adam and Eve in the garden. Everybody wrong, but ain't nobody looking at themselves to see what they did wrong, right? And so Sarah's like, yeah, this is on you. This ain't on me. This ain't my problem. The Lord judged between me and you. And what does Abraham do? Again, because we're not taking responsibility. Well, that's your servant. That's your slave. Do however you want to. What you mad at me for? I did what you told me to do. Now she acting out. You get her. You ain't got to come back to me to resolve the conflict. That's your maid. And so Sarah deals harshly with Hagar. And so harshly that Hagar flees from her presence. Now, let me talk to you about Hagar. Hagar was a slave. Okay, and if you want to give it a kind interpretation, she was a servant girl. But the point is that she was a slave from Egypt. She was not of the same race as Abraham and Sarah. She was not of equal footing as Abraham and Sarah, because even though she was given to him as a secondary wife, we want to put a heavy focus on the secondary. Okay, she was not a full wife. She was not loved the way Sarah was loved. She was not cherished the way Sarah was cherished. She was not going to have the same benefits as Sarah, the same portion as Sarah. In all ways, really, she was just a glorified concubine. And they use the term wife, I guess, to try to make themselves feel better. Okay, so this is this slave girl who probably was a young girl who slept with her master at his wife's request. And now because she got a little haughty about her position, her and the master's wife done clashed. And so now she's fled from her presence, meaning she's left the place where she lived. She's not in Egypt. Okay. She's not among her people. Abraham and Sarah are her people. And she has just basically probably been beaten by Sarah, probably cursed out by Sarah and told what she isn't worth and who she isn't and who she'll never be. Come on, ladies, think about it. If you decide that you're going to fight with a woman that's been with your man, all the things that you're saying to the chick and all the pain you're trying to physically inflict upon her, if that's how you get down. Me personally, I don't anymore. You can have them, sis. But the point is that so Hagar has just endured this. She's pregnant. She's a slave girl. She's not in her land, and she was just doing what she was told. And so, yeah, she did get haughty and she did probably around the house. Was it right? No, but none of it was right. Okay. And in the grand scheme of who's more at fault, it probably is not Hagar. So she has went off into the wilderness. Slave girl, young girl, pregnant, not away from home. Women back then, even if they had jobs, were not paid the same way as men. And so likely she's not going to be able to feed herself or shelter herself or clothe herself. And she's out here in these elements. And the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, where have you come from and where are you going? And she says, I'm fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarah. And the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. And before, when I would read this story, this account, I couldn't get no further than that. And I was like, Lord, do what? Sis done cussed me out. Sis done beat me up. And this is after sis done basically decided what I was going to do with her man. So basically trafficked me, right? And you want me to go back to these people and submit to them? Now, listen, granted, where she at, she could be eaten by wolves. She could be raped and pillaged, left for dead, and enslaved by somebody else. But it's like, Lord, that's the best that you got? Right? That's the best thing that you got? But that wasn't the last thing the angel of the Lord said. Verse 10 says, then the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her and said, you are the God who sees. Okay? For she said, have I also seen him who sees me? Therefore the well that she was by was called Bir Laha Roy. Observe, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when she did. There are some things I want to point out. First of all, we said Hagar was not a Hebrew girl, but she was an Egyptian girl who was enslaved. And take it a step further, the God that she was talking to was Abraham's God. It wasn't even her God. She had just been beat down by Abram's wife. And that God sent an angel out with her, one, to protect her from the elements of the wilderness where she was, and two, to speak directly to her. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but if you look through Genesis, you will not see, a direct conversation between the Lord or his angel with Sarah. But the Lord sent his angel to speak to Hagar. And not only that, he gave her a promise that, you know what, you did suffer this, but I will multiply your descendants exceedingly. That is the same promise that he gave Abraham. So that they shall not be counted for multitude. That was the same promise he gave Abraham. And the angel of the Lord revealed to Hagar, the slave girl, low in position, the name of Abraham's son. And she said, Lord, you see me? This is a God that she would have heard about secondhand. And I know for some of you, maybe that doesn't resolve the kink for you. But what I need you to understand is, man created this problem. And so what God did was he made the best of it. Hagar could have just birthed this son for Abraham and went all off into obscurity, but she didn't. Even though this was not the son of the promise that God, promised to Abraham, he still blessed him. She still had descendants that were exceeding. They couldn't be counted for multitude. The angel of the Lord spoke directly to her. And so for me, it's like, Lord, why did she have to endure this? And you just let Sarah get away scot-free. But the Lord, he didn't speak directly to her. And if you read out the rest of Sarah's story, yes, she had Isaac, and in her issues sent Ishmael and Hagar away eventually, but she only had Isaac. And she died before Abraham, 10 years younger than him, died before him, and he went on to remarry and have other kids. And if you read the ending of his story in Genesis, Ishmael came back with Isaac to bury him. So he was able to still have a relationship with his son, possibly. Now, I could be assuming. And that don't make it all right. But the Lord is there. And sometimes he's going to tell you to do things that you don't agree with. But there's a promise that's attached to it. And if God says that he's going to do something, that's what he's going to do. A lot of us have birthed Ishmaels. A lot of us have been used to birth Ishmaels because of the poor choices of somebody else. But I want you to take hold to the promise that the Lord is there, that he sees, and that he still has a promise for you to bring you out, to bring you to a future and a hope. Hagar was feeling hopeless by that well, in that wilderness. She was feeling betrayed, thrown away, trashed. But the Lord said to her, no, go back. That's the place where I'm going to protect you from these elements so that you'll be able to provide for your son, so that you'll be able to regain your strength and birth this baby safely. And what I'm going to do is the promise won't end just with Ishmael. Yes, he's going to be a wild man, okay? But I'm going to make your descendants. I'm going to multiply your descendants so that they cannot be counted. Because I'm here. I didn't want this to happen to you, but what I'm going to do is make some lemonade. And maybe it's not as good as had this never happened to you. But I'm going to make it all right. Because that's who I am. And Hagar was able to experience God, and with all the 7 ways, all the 7 names, she was able to have that banner of victory that Yahweh Nisi is, because her son came and he was healthy and her descendants multiplied. She was able to have Yahweh Rapha, the one who heals. He was able to heal the situation. And even though it wasn't perfect, he was able to heal the situation. And she had Yahweh Shalom, that while the situation was working itself out and while she was dealing with things, she was able to experience peace. And she was able to experience Yahweh Sabaoth, meaning the Lord of hosts, the Almighty God. And girl, let me stop with this note card. But she was able to experience the Almighty God who brought her out of that situation and multiplied her greatly. Because again, for a woman, the mark of value for them, and I'm not saying God agrees with that, is how many children they could have. So this slave girl, she breaks the womb with Abraham's child, but her descendants are multiplied. And I'm not saying that maybe she went on to have other kids or whatever, or if the promise just came through Ishmael. But the point is that it's a lot of them people over there. It's a lot of Israeli people, and it's a lot of Arab people who Ishmael's people are. It's a lot of them. Okay? And so her descendants multiplied, right? She was able to experience Yahweh Sikkenu, the God Lord's righteousness. The Lord is righteous. Because, Ishmael was not born under righteous conditions, but God placed his righteousness on his life regardless. And she experienced Yahweh Yireh, who provided for her. And at first it was through Abraham's household and Abraham's sustenance. But the point is that we didn't find Hagar anywhere begging bread. And actually, if you fast forward like 14 years, when her and Sarah had another blowout, and Sarah told Abraham to send them away, and Abraham was sad about it. Hagar is thinking, well, how am I going to provide for this boy? I ain't got no way to feed him. And so she had, set him by the well, given him some water, and went off afar so that she wouldn't have to watch him die. But Yahweh provided for her. And so why is this relevant to us right now? And it's because, we look at the messy things of life and we say, God, you didn't show up, or you didn't show up to keep this from being messy, because you're the Almighty God. You can do whatever you want to do. And this got messy. This got infected. This got destroyed. My heart is broken, right? My hope is deferred. My peace is gone. And you just sitting up there expecting me to still operate in your righteousness when you're not coming through for me. But as I spoke about at the beginning of the episode, make sure that somebody else's experience, make sure that somebody else's convictions are not becoming your noose. Make sure that you hear the promise that God has spoken for you. See, Hagar went out to that well feeling sorry for herself, and the angel of the Lord returned her in strength and returned her somewhat triumphantly. Right? I'm not saying her and Sarah became friends. It's obvious that they didn't. But what I'm saying is God worked it out anyway. And so, if you take nothing else from this episode, the Lord is there with you. And he is there to give you a word. He is there to give you direction. He is there to give you peace. He is there to give you comfort. He is there to provide whatever it is that you need. Place the demand on him to do it. Give him the reward of your faith in him to do it. And watch him work. Because we were not promised that this life would be easy. We were just promised that he would be with us and that we can overcome. That's what the Bible teaches, is that we can overcome everything that goes our way. Sometimes we'll be uncomfortable. Sometimes it will not be fun. It will not always be pleasurable. Those are not the things that he promised to us. But we will be triumphant. And so I miss my mama every single day, and I wish she was here. But one, she is healed because she's not dealing with that sickness and that pain anymore. And she is joined again with our Father. And I'm not saying she don't miss me too. but she ain't wishing she was back down here. And so in 2022, I want to invite you to just test God by trusting him, by allowing him to remove those kinks out of your hose, allowing him to speak to you, allowing him to explain, allowing him to reveal, and in so doing to elevate you, because promotion does come from the Lord. And if you pay attention, God will always, always speak. I'm here for you. I'm praying for you. Send me an email to payattentiontillhecomes@gmail.com. If you're seeing this number on the sign, that number is wrong. So don't call me at that number, because that's not me. But send me an email and I'll talk to you the next time.